Good afternoon. This is episode 2 of Let's Get Real About Racism. And we are continuing the conversation from last week about the murder and lynching of Mr. Ahmaud Arbery. And I'm also going to be talking about another situation that happened this week and a way that we can start to heal this divide. So I spent more time researching and studying Mr. Arbery's situation. The person who videoed the murder, also lived close to the father and son duo that killed Mr. Arbery. And there's been a lot of confusion as to whether or not he was a part of the posse. He's received death threats. His family has received death threats. He's having a really hard time. And so I want us to talk about the benefit of the doubt today all the way around the table and how important it is in our communities and our culture as a whole to do so. It's going to help not just racism and the divide between different cultures, but it will also help us in all of our relationships. So Mr. Arbery had been falsely accused. From what I've read, it sounds like it was thrown out of court, of shoplifting years ago. Now, I don't find this unusual because I've been shopping with Black friends across the country, but particularly in the South, and I know exactly the harassment that they experience when they go shopping. Doesn't matter how well dressed you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have in your pocket. If you are Black in the United States of America, you are assumed to be a thief and you are stalked. Now, as a white person, I want you to think about how hard that would be to endure day in and day out. So you have to worry about if you're pulled over by a police officer, if you're going to be falsely accused or arrested. You have to worry about being shot because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and your skin was Black, so you must have done something wrong. This is not an exaggeration. This is the reality of the world that we live in. And it has to be changed for no other reason than we're losing amazing, beautiful souls that add to our communities. So they've thrown that out about Mr. Arbery, and they've also said that day when he was on a jog that he went into a home that was being built in the neighborhood. He came out with nothing, obviously. He was jogging. He had nothing. But it was assumed that he, must be a thief and was looking for something to steal. Now I put myself in that situation. If I was walking through my neighborhood, and I want you to remember that Mr. Arbery is 25 years old, and I see a house being built. 25 is that age where you're dreaming of your first home and everything you're going to have and how wonderful life's going to be. I wouldn't have hesitated to have taken a quick turn, especially if it was my hometown and I was from there, to see what was being built. Because the probability that Mr. Arbery knew the man who owned the property is very high. I was from Lawrenceville, Georgia when it was still a rural town, and everybody knew everybody. And there's not a doubt in my mind that that was the situation here, which is why I find it so shocking and horrific that the father-son duo that murdered him just assumed because he was Black that he was a thief that had been breaking into homes in the area. We have to step up as members of a community and know who our neighbors are and cross this invisible divide. The fact that we still don't go to church together, that we don't break bread together, that we don't go to each other's homes, that we don't allow ourselves to know and love each other in a more intimate way, prevents our communities from reaching their full potential. What it does is allows for a separation that doesn't foster relationships and growth, but instead limits certain people from being the best that they can be. They're not given a chance. I read a post yesterday from a young man who had gotten his GED and gone to college and gotten a bachelor's and was not allowed to enter a graduate program because he had a GED. That was the excuse that he was given, even though he'd already earned a bachelor's. He was Black. And he went on to earn 2 master's degrees. when he found someone that would let him into a graduate program. This is the sort of thing I'm talking about, limiting others' potential. Instead of A, giving them the benefit of the doubt, B, looking at their heart, their drive, their passion, and facilitating the growth, understanding that doing so will allow your community to reach its full potential and be the best it can possibly be. So we now have a situation where Mr. Arbery's murderers are going to go through a grand jury, and I will keep you updated as to how that happens. It's probably going to be in June. My concern is that the peers in the area, the jury, are all going to have the same subconscious mentality that he was guilty and not care if the men who murdered him are sent to jail, because somewhere in their minds, right was done. This is a very real problem in this country, specifically in the South. And again, I speak from a woman who was raised in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and am a 7th generation Georgian, so I know of what I speak. The latest scenario that I read about that was also heart-wrenching is a story of a woman in Louisville, Kentucky. Her name was Mrs. Taylor. She was a 27-year-old mother and award-winning EMT. I'm going to say that again because I want it to sink in. She was a 27-year-old mother and award-winning emergency medical technician. Her home was broken into and she was shot and killed by police, and they were in the wrong house. Supposedly they were making a big drug bust, but as it turns out, the person they were looking for had already been arrested that morning. He was already in their custody. And they had the wrong address. He lived a couple of streets over. So why is it that Black lives matter less? I'm really grateful for social media in the 21st century because we can't deny this anymore. There's video. There's constant flashes, whether it's through an Instagram post or Twitter or Facebook, of what's really happening. And we are commanded to react, to come together and heal this divide. Whatever it takes for us to wash away the lie of racism out of our hearts and souls, it has to happen. For no other reason than we're not all we could be when we aren't uplifting everyone and supporting them to reach their full potential. It's common sense to me. I don't understand why people don't get that. So with the latest murder of Mrs. Taylor, with the ongoing grand jury investigation into the murders of Mr. Arbery, we just seem to have a lot in the news right now. But I want to be sure you realize this happens all the time. If you pay attention, it seems like every other week there's a new story about a gross atrocity that has happened in this country against minorities, particularly African Americans. It's time to make a change, and as Michael Jackson said, that begins with the man in the mirror. You have to really look at yourself, reflect on where your head is, hold the people around you accountable for their behavior, their actions, their words, their prejudice. Call them out. Because do you really want them in your life if they're filled with hate and fear? It's probably not the best support system you could have. So please, let's give each other the benefit of the doubt, but let's also hold each other accountable for a better world, a better place to live in. It's past time that we do that. And next week I'm going to take a look at the justice system and how it's a system of racism. We're going to explore that. I'll throw lots of percentages and numbers at you, and things that you may not know that may shock you, but you need to know. We all need to know so we can act accordingly. And vote in November. Okay. Have a good day. See you next week.